Good afternoon. And for those who fast Ramadan Kareem, I welcome you on behalf of the Mauritania British Business Council to a webinar with Kissima Diagana, a prominent Mauritanian journalist, a former professor in philosophy in France, but now who is the publisher of a news site called newsinitiatives.com, as well as the weekly print La Tribune in Nouakchott. And most of all, also, he's one of the authors of the report on reform of the media in Mauritania, set up by the president last year. And the report was delivered to the president last month in March. And will be one of the subjects he will be speaking on, as well as other related subjects. Um, there's also a Irish announcement. People who are interested in AIX Gas Africa can find information to join that event on the 23rd of June. That's the first one. They can join through the MBBC because the MBBC is the partner with AIX. So therefore, I would like to hand over to Kissima to get the proceedings properly going. Thank you very much, Kissima.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for the confiance. Okay, let me tell you that I will try to talk about the situation of media in Mauritania and try to talk about relative subjects like the film on the story of the Mauritanian, okay? And maybe I will have to give 2 or 3 points about the freedom of culture in Mauritania regarding to the diversity in Mauritania of ethnical and language diversities. These are the points I will try to talk about with you. Thank you very much. In the beginning, when I want to talk about the major situation in Mauritania or the freedom, I have a title, Freedom of Expression and the Test of Multiple Pressures. Why we have to talk about this? Because the freedom of expression in Mauritania is a reality, but we can see a lot of peoples or groups who are making pressure of the media. So here it will not be more about the official media. It will be so more about the independent press, which market the media in Mauritania. I'm not going to talk about the official press, which is organized in state structures. We know that the editorial line of this official press is dictated by the government. So there is, in particular, the Mauritanian News Agency called AMI, which publishes two versions of a national daily called Horizon in French and Sha'ab in Arabic. And there is also the Mauritanian National Radio and the Mauritanian National Television. I can say that these three measures belongs to the government. They are official measures. I'm not going to talk more about this official press. So in Mauritania, we know that the media I talk about boomed in the early 1990s in a context of a relative dictatorship. The first independent newspapers were born. Then the independent press was then the work of teachers, high school teachers, and all the executives from people other than that of the journalism field. This independent press was first French speaking, and after we can note that in the independent press we can have Arabic speaking more than the French speaking now, as it right now. This independent press, we can note Le Temps, El Bayan, La Tribune, Le Veille Hebdo, Nouakchott Info, Le Kalam, are, among others, the first titles of the free press. And the editorial line were generally defined in an angle of opposition to political power. Then, taboo subjects that the official media kept silent were tackled by independent journalists and become subject of debate involving intellectuals and ideologists of the country. With the multi-party system at that time I will talk about the earlier 1990s, politicians have interfered in the practice of journalism. A proliferation of newspapers occurs, reflecting a progressive control of political, economic, even military personalities on the media. One can imagine what the field of the press will become, an environment of tension between tribals, politicals, and other groups. Then the media will be simply a tool at the service of stakeholders for whom the issue of leadership take priorities over professionalism. After 20 years, maybe 2010 or 2010, the liberalization of the press extends to the audiovisual and web journalism domain. In Mauritania, there are several hundred newspapers and websites. The private radios and television exist. We cannot maybe 5 private televisions and 5 private radios, but they don't work very regularly because they have problems. They exist, but they face to a lack of competent human resources. And the businessmen, owners obviously, do not understand the challenges of the audiovisual domain or the audiovisual sector. Journalists then, they lose all enthusiasm. They do not their profession in performing their tasks because the quality journalism is weakened as a result. And then when we talk about this situation, that is negative situation, we can ask ourselves the need to reform. How can be the need of reform? So in July 2020, the Mauritanian president sets up a commission to reform the media sector. Peter told you that right now. I was a member of this commission. And then in the front of the members of this commission, the president painted a gloomy picture of the sector. He talked about anarchy, lack of professionalism, mercantilism, and lack of objectivity. He talked then about the absence of non-verification of information, frequent defamation and dissemination of rumors are the main evils that require reform, as the president says. What was the aim? The aim of this reform was to strengthen and protect freedom based on responsibility. Then we worked for 6 months about these points. And what have we done? As a community, we have made a diagnosis of the press in the country. In particular, we have noted a loss of interest in the journalism profession, both among consumers of information and among the actors themselves. Why? Why can the situation be like that? Around the world, the media have considerable influence on politics, economy, culture, and society in general. So in Mauritania, they have lost all values, all thought, private promoters have invested in their company. So the imbalances we noted, the problem of access to information sources. Many journalists cannot have an access to the sources of information. because the official person or the source are frequently closed in front of them. And we have an abuse in the exercise of freedom. When a journalist cannot have the access to the right resources, maybe he can make his own information. This is why here we cannot an abuse of the exercise of freedom. And another point is that here is a lack of respect of the ethical rules, because we cannot confusion between freedom of press and freedom of speech. Freedom of press requires professionalism, respect of the deontology and the ethical rules. And we have another problem. We don't know what is the role of the electronic press and the social medias. We have a lot of websites, and we have people's intervening in social media, and they want to be counted among the journalists. When we were working, we met, when we work in the commission, we met several persons who came to us telling us we are journalists. We asked them, journalists for which newspaper or which website? They say we are journalists on Facebook. You see that? Okay, it has been noted a confusion from the difference between the electronic press and social media. We note another problem, another imbalance. It was the lack of clear and progressive planning for the development of the audiovisual domain, and an insufficient financial support and the misusing of what exists. We can have a lot of media here in Mauritania, but they cannot support what they need to work normally in their field. Another thing, it is the exercise of the professionals of journalists is done or is exercised by non-professionals. I told you at the beginning that the free media in Mauritania is the work of teachers and other people who are not from the field of media. But this does not mean that the earlier practitioners or the earlier actors of the media in Mauritania were not professional, because they did a lot of training to be able to practice the domain of journalism or the profession of journalism. In our commission, we propose that the reform focus on the establishment of media management structures. For example, a Ministry of Communication and Culture. We know that in England or in other countries, this kind of structure does not exist. In France, it does not exist. In America, maybe it does not exist. But we thought that it was important for Mauritania to have a Ministry of Communication and Culture, and again a National Press Council as a second structure. We proposed that we can have a Mauritanian Institute of Press and Information Technology, because here in Mauritania we have no school to train regularly journalists. We have not a university or a high school for journalism in particular. And we proposed that we can have an agency for collection and the distribution of advertising revenues, like a national financial authority. We have right now an authority for the publicity, what we say publicity, so we don't know how it works. We cannot note that it works to give chance to all of press establishment to have their duty and to be able to work. We propose another thing, other things among what we have: a National Center for Press Archives, a National Polling Center, a Cybersecurity Administration, a Publishing Printing House, and a press agency, a very big press agency, different from what exists. And we propose the creation of a specialized educational and development radio and television channels, some of which may be local, because Mauritania is a country which is with neighbors are Senegal and Mali, and even Maghreb, Morocco, and other countries. So in Mauritania, we have not these kind of educational and development radio and television, and we need it for the Mauritanian society. We have around 4 million people in Mauritania, and it is a people that has diversity of its cultures, and it needs that we create these kinds of radios and television. So these points of reform must obviously be the subject of a legal framework that we defined in the report we presented in February to the Mauritanian President Mohamed El Ghazouani. And this report was the subject of a communication to the Council of Ministries a month ago. So these are the points I can talk about relatively to the situations of media. Maybe in the Q&A, we can ask about more than what I thought about. If I can give the answers, I will do. The second point, it is about the Mauritanian, the film, you know. It was for me the film that rehabilitated a former Mujahid, because it was about Mohamed Salahi's history. And we know that this the former prison was a subject of miscarriage of justice. And the Guantanamo notebooks he wrote allowed him to endure a inhuman condition of detention. And the film that brought his story to the screen has helped to help rehabilitate him further. Today, he is appointed by the government to represent the country. So when the Mauritanians watched the film, some of them gave the ideas about the film, talked about the film, but I found on Facebook some of them talking about the film, and I think I can give you some of them. Some of Mauritania. One of them said, "What I felt from the film's conclusion is that Mohamed Salahi Hertz is rooted in faith and love despite what he tasted as bitterness with the loss of his mother, and as precious in the hard times spent in the chain for 14 years in the meanders of the horrible Guantanamo." This is what said Abdurrahman Al-Wadadi, a blogger in Mauritania, who is followed by more than 71,000 people on Facebook. It is important for us to use this quote from a blogger in Mauritania who is followed by a lot of people, because in Mauritania, people are paying attention to who is more followed by other peoples on social medias. We noted that when we were working in our commission. Another Mauritanian citizen, a woman, said on Facebook that, on one hand, I think that the film did not give much value to Mauritania throughout landscapes, cultures, and etc., because very few sequences were filmed in the country. She wanted to see more landscape, more images on Mauritania, but she did not. And she said that, on the other hand, Salahi's pity, his calm, his sense of humor, which he retained despite the difficult condition of his imprisonment made him a real symbol of resistance and tolerance. These virtues which enhanced the film and made the Mauritanian an unbeatable hero. That woman's name is Nedwa Mokhtar Nech on Facebook. Even the film is inspired by his notebook, the Guantanamo Diary. I read once in this diary, Selahi himself saying, in defiance of all legal guarantees, my country delivered me to the United States as if I were a candy factory. Americans sent me to Jordan to be tortured, then background, and finally here in Guantanamo. I have been living outside the world for over 4 years, Mohamedou Selahi said in Guantanamo Dailies. I wanted to remind this thought because now when we look at the film, we note that Mauritanian government gave this to this film a big importance. Then I want to say that as to the Mauritanian government, it was settled a committee in charge of monitoring the work of the film, La Mauritania, after government expressed its satisfaction with regard to the remarkable success obtained by the film at the international level. Maybe it does not have the same remarkable success in a national to the national level, but Mauritanian government welcomes the great interest that the president himself gave this work of art. We remember that he sent a tweet to talk about the success of the Selahi's film, or the film about Selahi. It was an interest expressed by the lively congratulation he addressed to Mohammed Selahi, whose film tells the story of his suffering. The committee proceeded to prepare an appropriate action plan to follow up the next steps. So we know that the Dubai World Expo will be organized from October 2021 to March 2022 in Dubai, in United Arab Emirates, around the theme Connecting Minds. So Mauritania will be represented by a delegation led by Mohamedou Ould-Salah. This is a sign of rehabilitation for a man who is moving toward culture through the profile of a writer, which he is now. In the end of my presentation, I just want to share with you an information. I wanted to talk about the challenge of cultural diversity in Mauritania. So I have just one information I want to share with you. It is about the HAPA. The HAPA is the High Authority of Press and Audiovisual in Mauritania. 2 weeks ago, president of this structure, Hussein Ould-Medoud, declared that national language are in sharp decline in the Mauritanian audiovisual space. And the national language concerned are the Pular, Soninke, and Wolof. Each language, Pular, Soninke, and Wolof, represent one community in Mauritania. So in Mauritania, we have 4 communities recognized in the constitutions. We have the Arabic community, we have the Pular community, we have the Soninke community, and the Wolof community. And the Constitution of Mauritania said that the national languages are Arabic, Pular, Wolof, Soninke. The Constitution did not talk about the French as a national or an official language. So the Constitution of Mauritania said that the Arab is the official language in Mauritania. This is why the administration works in Arabic. We know that in the reality, we have the French that is present every time in the administration activity. So it appears only in what the president of HAPA said, that 20%, only 20% are given to the three national languages, Wolof and Soniki, in the local radios and local television station. This information is according to a survey on audiovisual diversity in Mauritania. And 2 years ago, they were giving the results about this representation of the other cultures in Mauritania. Then the cultural actors deplored the situation of exclusion of their communities from the right of access to information. When I give you this information, maybe we can ask ourselves to know how is Mauritania in managing its diversity? Because to manage a diversity in a nation like Mauritania, you can ask yourself if all of the communities have an equal access to the information. And well, okay, so this is my presentation, and I think I could be more exhaustive. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Kissima. That was very interesting, very comprehensive, a really long, well thought and crafted argument. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So many points. There will be a question and answer session, and it will be led by Roger Nunn. But I'll use my position here in the chair to kick it off. It's very interesting to note that you in Mauritania have also the problems between the problems between perception of mainstream media, and the kind of the new social media, which then filters in with the kind of fake and bogus news, and also, for me, because I'm trained as a journalist as well, everybody can call, you get the activist journalist, the citizen journalist, but they don't know the laws of libel, of defamation, which is, of course, and I know in Mauritania people like to defame each other quite well. Yes. So, but my question is, have you any response yet from the president on the report?
The response of the president, when we gave him the report on February 2, he told us only that he congratulates us, and he says that he will do the best to give the chance to our proposition to be in applications. And I think 3 weeks or 1 month after, they talked about the report in the meeting of the ministries. After that, we do not have another information about what is the decision for this.
Thanks very much, Peter. Yeah, very happy to. And Kissima, again, thank you very much for your remarks. Really, really interesting.
Thank you, Roger.
Really interesting, I must say. My question was a follow-up to Peter's. Really, you made the point in your remarks about the decreasing interest in journalism as a profession through the through years past, and I wondered if the profile of the commission since July last year has yet made any difference in the interest of young people in considering journalism as a profession.
Yeah, of course, because we propose that we can do a lot of trainings for the young people who are interested to be journalists in Mauritania. And we propose that we can have a school and institutes to give chance to young people who are acceding to the university to make the choice to be journalists. And in particular, how we can do our best to give them the chance to improve their practice in journalism. because a lot of them are very, very good to practice what we say, the new tools of media. And here is a situation where we note that the young people is bringing themselves to the mojo, the mobile journalism.
Very good. And a follow-up question, if I may. I'm just interested to what degree do young Mauritanian journalists, do you have the opportunity to mix with international journalists, in international media? There must be a few foreign correspondents in Mauritania. Do you have the opportunity to talk to them and to mix with them?
Yeah, of course we have this opportunity. And note that in Mauritania we have Arab speaker journalists and French speaker journalists. And more of them in the Arab speak journalists are correspondents for the Emirate Arab channels and other Arabic channels here right now. They are the correspondents. And me, I'm not young, but I gave the chance to one young people to be the correspondent for international media here in Nouakchott, because I looked at his level, and I know that he has a good level to be a correspondent. And by the way, I want to say that we have a very big problem of language with the young journalists here now, so, in particular in French, how they practice the French language. If they want to be correspondent for international media, they have to be very performant in French.
Okay, I'll have another question too. I was very interested what you said about the national languages. All right. So there's the three languages: Pular, Wolof, and Soninke, apart from Arabic. So
Yeah.
is the knowledge of these languages diminishing at the moment? Young people don't speak Soninke or Pular or Hassania Arabic anymore. They turn to French instead of their own native languages. I mean, how is it possible to protect the languages from the kind of international power in most cases than Arabic or French and English in other cases? What is the policy on the protection of these kind of cultural heritage of the languages?
I think the problem is not how to protect the languages, because people speak their own languages. People does not lose their language. People do not lose their language, not yet. But the situation in Mauritania is that some of them feel that they are not a part of the Mauritanian people when they look at what the government, what the administration do according to their existence in the country. Some protesters that in the assembly or in the administration, we speak only Arabic, not the administrative, not the academic Arabic, but the local Arabic language, which is the Hassania. Okay, they feel themselves discriminated in this situation, and young people in Mauritania speak, of course, their own language. Soninke young people speak their own language. Wolof speak languages, and Pular speak language, and even Arab speak Arabic. But Arab and French are the more shared languages in Mauritania between all of the communities. We can have a Halpular or a Wolof or a Soninke speaking very well Arabic and English and French. So it rarely we have an Arabic young people or an Arabic old man speaking very well Polar, Soninke, Wolof at the same time. So this is the situation. And one way to protect the languages is the propositions people give. Some of political men or some cultural men or women say that it is important to teach the languages in the school to the young Mauritanian students. And another proposition is in the energy. Energy is the school of administration, magistrates, and journalists. We have to teach the local languages to all of the students who are attending to be maybe governors, prefects, or administration people. Because the idea is that when you send somebody to be the governor in Kaidi or in Gidaha or in another area in the country where people are not Arab people, it is important for him to be able to speak their local language. These are some ideas about education. And right now, the president of the HAPA proposed us to think about training for the local language users in medias.
Thank you very much. We've got a question has come up in the chat box from Sahar. The question is for people outside Mauritania, they can find it difficult to monitor the events that are happening in the country and incidents on the ground in the country. The question is, do you as a Mauritanian journalist find it easy to be aware of the events that are happening across the country, across Mauritania, or is it difficult for you as well as a Mauritanian journalist to find out these things?
Yes, I find it true. It is not very easy to access to all informations we want in Mauritania. But you see, the journalists, one of the challenges of journalists is to try to open the sources when the sources are closed. This depends, it depends to the journalists or the researchers' capacity or ability to go to the source he wants. This is true. I can give you one example. When I ask a correspondence of Reuters, I can just do my best to help them to access to the official sources and the other sources they need. And they have to look for what we say accreditation, to have the authorization to do their own job. This depends to how we are organized in Mauritania and how people coming in Mauritania to look for information organize themselves.
I think we're finished. Sahar says thank you very much. Let me say, Kissima, thank you very much indeed again for taking the time to share your perspectives with us and to talk to us. I think it's been a really interesting presentation, a really interesting conversation. So on behalf of the MBBC, thank you very much indeed.
I can thank you so very much, you too.
Yeah, we look forward to meeting you in Nouakchott in person.
I would like to add my personal thanks also on behalf of the MBBC. I found it very inspiring. You know, it was different than we would normally do, but I found it very inspiring. I think I think the hope for a good quality media sector. You know, I see that you do very good work, and because a good media sector, a proper good media sector, you know, not defamation, but that is essential for the progress of, you know, kind of in democracy in Mauritania and in the rest of the surrounding world.
It was a pleasure. Bye bye.
All right.